Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Mel, can you hear me all right? All right. All right, just as long as that's good. Welcome to Wednesday night. Missy Davis. we're gonna start now, if that's all right. All right. First, just wanted to make sure everybody understands that tonight, for the next hour, you're gonna have to listen to me, so I'm gonna apologize ahead of time. Brian says he can't hear. Alan and I traded off, so he's going to take some notes and send me a long email tomorrow about everything I did wrong. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll just go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you. Thank you so much for this time that we can come together and we can just dive into your word and just follow the story of Moses and get from that how we can see it in ourselves, see it in our time, see it in our actions, and just the power of your plan and the plan that is beyond us, Lord. Lord, I ask you just to help with the conversation, keep it invigorating and keep it towards you, and just make it a great night, Lord. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, so keeping with my consistency, I did not have enough time to put together a sheet, so I apologize ahead of time. I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna try to work on that. We are working out of Exodus 5 tonight, so if you want to go into your Bible and take a look at Exodus 5, just a little bit of background. We talked about God going to Moses, speaking to Moses for the burning bush, and getting with the officers and so forth of the Israelites. And God told Moses his general plan. He told him what to say. He told him what to do. He told him he could bring Aaron with him to say it. So Moses' job was to get the Hebrews out of Egypt. But first, he obviously would have to have a conversation with Pharaoh, and that's where we're starting today. Kind of as we go through this, there's two verses for me that really, really, really stand out that I thought were really profound. So hopefully we'll have some good conversation with that. Exodus 5, verse 1. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." So I'm actually just going to stop right there and start and just kind of break this up a little bit. First of all, afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh. Pharaoh, who is Pharaoh? Pharaoh, there's a lot of talk as to who Pharaoh actually was in this context. The Bible doesn't say who he was, but there's a lot of people, and I apologize for butchering these Egyptian names, but there's a lot of people who may say that it was the Pharaoh was Ramses, that it was Ahmose, that it was Thutmosu, that it was Merneptah, that it was Amenhotep, or even King Tut. There is nothing in the Bible that says who this was, and I think that it's actually deliberate to say not to say who it was, because if the Bible said who this Pharaoh was, then it actually puts focus on the Pharaoh, and it pulls away from what the story is, because who the Pharaoh was really unnecessary. It's not important. So basically, I think that just having that it being that it's Pharaoh, that's enough. It's the leader. It's the guy that was in charge. Which Pharaoh was, doesn't matter. So Moses' brother Aaron are before this king, this Pharaoh, and they say, "Let my people go." And in the Hebrew version of this, basically it means to release or to send away. So he's looking for Pharaoh to just like relinquish the not necessarily control, because technically it wasn't control, but they were looking for his a request to let them leave, for him not to have a hold on any of them. They said they want to let those people go because they want to hold a feast for the Lord their God in the wilderness. The feast in Egypt, you were only allowed within the Egyptian confines, you were only allowed to worship the Egyptian gods. So if they had this other god that they wanted to worship that was not considered the Egyptian god, they couldn't do it within the city walls. So they would actually have to go out. They'd have to leave, and that was actually out of respect. The theory is, the language is that it's out of respect and it's not to offend any of the Egyptians. They would have to kind of leave and have this festival style gathering. It would take about 3 days for them to do this. Like, it took about 3 days to actually leave the confines of the city. And so so Moses and Aaron are talking about going 3 days to get outside the territory of Egypt. And from there, they could celebrate God. Therefore, they could have this feast. Verse 2, and Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go." So in Egyptian culture, they had over 100 gods. So they had gods of trees, they had gods of the sun, they had gods of ham sandwiches, they had all kinds of gods. For the Pharaoh, they believed that when the Pharaoh took power, he actually had a connection to two specific gods. There was Horus, who was the god who had defeated the forces of chaos and restored order. They also believed that when they died, that they were connected to the god Osiris. I'm sure I'm really giving you bad information or pronunciation. That is the god of the dead. And on top of that, they believed that pharaohs were actually part of a lineage from the sun god Ra. So you've got like a huge connection all about gods. There's just gods of this, gods of that, and they believed that the pharaoh was a part of this lineage. And there are actually a lot of Egyptians that felt that they were also a part of lineage of God. So gods were really, really, really a big thing to them. It was really, really important. So Pharaoh hears this, and he starts thinking, let's see, there's the gods of trees, gods of sun, gods of ham sandwiches. I don't know this God. And I think that this is the first piece to me that is really, really profound. The words that he actually said when he realized that he did not recognize this authority, he said, "The Lord, who is this Lord? I gotta go back right. Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice?" And I think that is a really profound question, because I think even today, so many people are asking the same question. I think so many people are still saying, "Who's the Lord? Why should I follow him?" And I think that it's really interesting is how we can start thinking about, in terms of that, what the answer is. He didn't recognize this God. He didn't recognize his authority. But the simple question of, "Lord, who is that I should follow him?" I don't know that one. So no, nope, I don't know that God. I'm not going to let you go. That's the end of the story. So, like, how would you answer the question if Pharaoh said that? I wasn't rhetorical. I was looking for answers too, by the way. Hmm?
No, I think a lot of times we're like, "Oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay." What would you say? Thank you.
Yeah, well,
This is the most powerful man in the world. Moses shows up and says, "Hey, let him go." "No, I don't care. I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, okay."
It's interesting you say this is the most powerful guy. Like, it doesn't really say how Moses got into the court.
Right.
Like it wouldn't be like, hey, I want to talk to Pharaoh. Like he would have had to have.
Did he put his guard back on?
Yes. Yeah. Did he use what influence he might actually have? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You would almost think Pharaoh was just like, okay, put him in jail. And that would have been the end of it. But like,
Mhm.
It's one of those things like a head scratch. Well, Pharaoh, like you're saying, how'd you make your way into Pharaoh? Now that you told him what you told him, well, okay, guards,
Mhm.
take him away.
Like, I can almost picture Pharaoh just actually laughing. Who? Who's this guy? I don't know that one. Like, get out of here. No, it's not going to happen. It just completely kind of blowing them off. Yeah.
So Moses is the one that was fished out of the Nile River by Pharaoh's daughter. So would Pharaoh have known him as possibly a grandson, adopted? Or, I don't know how many years later this is, but still 40
Yeah.
years.
So potentially he's.
Even if it's a different Pharaoh,
Mm.
Moses is still part of that royal lineage. I think he would have some recognition of who Moses is.
Well, and that's especially
Stature in the government, but
there would be you think there'd be some kind of lore about his existence. Oh, where people are still telling stories about this Israelite and he killed a guard, and and that sort of thing. Like you think there would still be something, and whether or not he leveraged that, no idea. Or did he just, did he make an appointment and that was how he got in? But I think here where Pharaoh is just kind of nah, I, I don't know you. I don't know what you're talking about. Beat it. Not gonna do it. But I still think that just the fact that that he asked the question, who is this God? Like, and why should I listen to him? Like that's an open door, and I know that for this Pharaoh, he's doesn't. That's not where his heart's going, but that is the kind of the open door for the conversation. Now, God had a much bigger plan. Mark.
Sorry, but it's somebody to say that, to say, who is God? It kind of goes along with, if I was Moses, I think I would apply it as God is the one who saved Egypt out of years ago. But it just goes in line with how I would hear where a generation later, people forget it for history.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did it tendency for the Israelites to forget God, but here's an Egyptian Pharaoh who forgets who God is by him saying, who's this God?
And isn't that like that's pretty much consistent with the way that we are even today? Is like we'll forget events pretty darn fast, or as time goes by, they get twisted, and they oh no, that wasn't the way it was. It was they had this guy Joseph. He was actually kind of crazy, just. So, but you're right. It's the can you reference? Do you remember this God and the one that saved all of Egypt, the one that did all these things? Yeah.
The Israelites would not have been quick to use the formal name of God, the proper name. So when I have this capital Lord, that's Yahweh.
Yep.
So he is calling God's formal name, which for Moses or Aaron, who was talking to do this, would have been like sacred, serious. Don't take this lightly.
Mhm.
To use this name. So this is like highly like they are like, no, this is serious. And then for him to just listen, who's Yahweh? I don't know who this is. It just shows like the honor and respect that they're holding for God, and Pharaoh just quickly dismissing it and just like showing no respect at all, no honor to the name of God.
Mm-hmm. And I got a little bit more out of this because the personal approach behind it that Moses and Aaron have, as Pharaoh sits there, it's like, oh, we've got all these other gods. I don't need that one. He's nothing to me. And it kind of thinks of how people think today. And it may not be that they have gods of trees, gods of suns, and gods of ham sandwiches, but people do worship sleep, TV, money, all those different things. And well, look, I've got all these things over here. I've got these things that I put my faith in, that I put my worship towards. I don't need this. I don't need Yahweh. I don't need that one. And that in that culture of that day, I've got this. Yours is in whatever. It's nothing to me. So you kind of can apply that culture of then to the culture of today, and I think you still
because for him, it's threatening his well-being, his comfort,
right.
his prosperity.
Mhm.
For us.
Yep.
It's like we want our comfort more than we want God demands.
Yeah, because if all my gods they require of me is that I plant my crops at a certain time or something like that, I could do that. But looking for the discipline, looking for obedience, that does kind of all right. Yeah, I'm not interested in that.
I think it's interesting that like they recognize all these gods, but they don't recognize the God of all gods.
Mm.
Like Yahweh is God of gods. So it's interesting. They'll recognize everything except for the most powerful God.
It always, how do you figure out which god when you've got like 100 of them? Do they overlap each other? Do you have to use combinations? Are they like Pokemon cards where I have no idea if I use that reference right, so I apologize. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. All right. Oop.
Minor comment, but I think that in the history of Egypt, at a time they did refer to one God. And that didn't go very well for that Pharaoh and his family.
Mm-hmm. Is it during the time of Joseph? Verse 3. So they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go 3 days' journey into the desert and sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. So here's that 3 days. So it's 3 days' journey would take them outside the city. So they're outside of Egyptian territory. They're not offending anybody. They moved it. It is assumed that if they go out, it takes 3 days to go out. How long is it going to take for them to come back? 3 days. So at bare minimum, the request would be 6 days. If you're assuming that the request means that they're actually going to come back. So that would have been at least 6 days. But Moses, in his request, left it open-ended. He said, I want to take a 3-day journey out to, have this big feast. All right, well, that doesn't count how long a feast is going to last. So feast could be days, could be a half hour. I don't know how long do these feasts actually take. So if you take 3 days and then a feast and then another 3 days, assuming that you're coming back, you are obviously going to be gone for at least a week or something like that. So he said, and if we don't do that, if we don't follow this commandment, God is going to strike us down. God's going to send a plague or strike us down. If they don't go and that happens, this is almost kind of like not a threat, but here's the consequence. So striking the Israelites down or having a plague isn't like, oh, I feel bad for the Israelites. It's Pharaoh would lose a lot of his workforce if that were to happen. So if you have got these Israelites that are doing so much work, they've got them working day and night. They're making it really hard on them. And if God all of a sudden decides to strike them down, then they've lost a good portion of that workforce. And I think that's kind of where Moses is coming from. But remember, he don't believe in this God, so it doesn't make any difference to him. All he's hearing is, you want to leave for at least 3 days, 6 days, and then I'll know that for those 6 days, I don't have my workforce. If you, just to kind of go back and just see where Moses is coming from, if you go back to Exodus 3, 18 through 19 is where God actually told him what to say. And I'll just read it real quick. You don't have to go to it. But 18, it said, then they will heed your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt. And you shall say to him, the Lord God of the Hebrews has met with us. And now, please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not even by a mighty hand. So this is exactly what God told him to do. Is to go to that Pharaoh and you tell him, let me go for 3 days, we're going to have a big feast. So that's Moses being obedient, and God said, but he's going to tell you no. I know he's going to tell you no. He's going to tell you no. God told Moses to tell this to Pharaoh, told him what to say, but God knew that he was still going to say no. So why would God tell Moses to do something that he knew the answer to already? Any thoughts? A test of obedience? I've got my answer, so I'm going to... Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Actually see the Lord working. Any other thoughts?
I think one of the flex the muscles. Yeah, that'll show that he's a greater God than the God they worship, and give the example of Israel as they lead that I'm the one that you need to follow.
So the different things that I read, kind of what I got out of it was this is kind of the first step towards a crescendo that God said. So here's a little request. I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to keep it like really kind of low key. Hey, can we go do this? He's going to tell you no. But after that, God starts building it, and building it, and building it. And I'm out of frame. Building it to make it even more. And what you'll find as we kind of go through all that other stuff is you see Pharaoh actually start to negotiate back to this original request. So it's funny how this starts off like it's just this, here's just a simple little thing. He's going to say no, but it's the doorway to leading to other things. So this is the base of what God ultimately demands of Pharaoh. Any thoughts?
Well, if you think about it, if you just went to Pharaoh and Pharaoh said yes, the people would have been impacted by all the plagues. And they wouldn't even know the conversation happened, and then all of a sudden Egypt would leave. But by having to go back and back, all these people were impacted by all these different plagues. It wasn't just a Pharaoh that was impacted, it was all of Egypt.
Mm-hmm. And you wonder like how much was in Pharaoh's ear about all the way through that. But Pharaoh, who is a god in his own mind, that's where he's living. So he's like, no, I'm still more powerful. Anything else? All right, verse 4. Hey, man, I'm not doing too bad. I might be doing this next week. Yes, please.
How many times I'm confident, yes, this is the direction that God wants me to go. Then I hit some barrier or obstacle, and it's like, I guess I was wrong. Like, how easy is it for us to lose faith when we get told no for something that we're confident in? And maybe the no is just part of God's plan to get us where we need to go.
Mm-hmm.
We give up. And maybe going through the wilderness and going through the plagues is part of what God has in mind for us. But we fail.
When it gets
I was thinking the same thing. I'm letting you know this is what's going to happen, but just so you know, it's not going to work right off the bat. So don't get discouraged. I got more stuff coming, but let's just stick to this part. It's not gonna work, it's gonna be okay.
Hmm.
And that's what I was thinking as well. That's deep. And it doesn't work for me. Like, I don't want it, I don't want the no's. Don't tell me no. Like, tell me this what's gonna happen and let it work out.
Tell me the whole story.
Yes.
So that I know, okay,
Yes.
after all this, I'm gonna get the victory.
Yeah,
But like in this moment, it's just no.
yeah, and it's enough. And it's enough.
Well, hold those thoughts till later on. Moving on. Verse 4. Then the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, to their face, why do you take the people from their work? Get back to your labor. And Pharaoh said, look, the people of the land are many now, and you make them rest for their labor. So Pharaoh's like, what are you doing? Like you're asking this silly request, and you're just making people like stop what they're doing. They're trying to work. You're just trying to get them out of work. There's so many people doing this work now that honestly, if they were to leave to do this, the economy would suffer, right? Because they're working, they're a part of the system, even though they're being somewhat forced labor here, but they are still a part of the system. If they were to leave, the stuff that they were doing would just sit. So he's like, you're going to take these people away. You're going to give them a break, which is something that Pharaoh's not into right now. He really wants to make sure that they just keep on getting the pain. Verse 6. So the same day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, you shall no longer give the people straw to make brick as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves, and you shall lay on them the quota of bricks which they made before. You shall not reduce it, for they are idle, lazy. Therefore they cry out, saying, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Let more work be laid on the men, and they may labor in it, and let them not regard false words. So the predominant job of these Israelites is to make mud bricks. Do you know what the main ingredient of mud bricks is? Mud. All right. So that wasn't such a tough one. All right. The Egyptian topsoil was rich in clay and silt and sand, so which actually made like a pretty good brick. But on its own, just mud on its own, like is not very stable to dry out. So you have to add something to it that would help the integrity. And what they would do is they would add straw. So I apologize to any farmers here before I, really annihilate the where you get straw from. But the straw comes from the stalk of the wheat, and it's obviously the part that they're not using. That when it gets chopped off, they would chop that up and they would mix it in with the mud and the water, and they would mix it most of the time using your feet. You had a lot more stamina, you could move it around better, and you had more strength, and you could do it for longer if you used your feet. So these mud bricks that they would use, that they would make, they would use it to build buildings with. Nowhere in the Bible, nowhere anywhere does it say that they use these mud bricks to build pyramids. So there's even believed that the pyramids were built even before this time. So like the pyramid, because actually they were made of stone anyway. So they would make these mud bricks, and the mud bricks were used for all kinds of stuff. The straw that they used for it came with obviously the harvest, and so that would mean there was only periods of time when they would actually have the straw. So what the Egyptians would do is they would take the straw and they would have to store it, because you can't just build bricks just when you have straw. They were building bricks throughout the entire year. Constant construction all the time, just like Del Dot. Although the Egyptians probably had an end game, but anyway. So they would have to store this stuff. So it was for when it was out of season. So in these verses, Pharaoh says that we're not going to give you this straw. You're going to have to go get your own straw. So nowhere does the Bible say, and Pharaoh did not say, you have to make bricks without straw. is we're going to make bricks without straw that we're going to give you. You got to go find it yourself, because guess what? We still need buildings that stay up. We still need the integrity of that brick. Not only do you now need to go get your own straw in order to continue making these quality bricks, but you also have to keep making the same amount of bricks that you've been making all along. And my research I got was each taskmaster had to do about 1,000 bricks a day. I don't know how many people that took to do the 1,000 bricks, but in that grouping, it was about 1,000 bricks. That's what I got from my research. So, for the getting in the straw, right? Yeah. So now, if you got to still do 1,000 bricks, and it would take you all day to do 1,000 bricks, now you got to go find your straw, which is going to take longer because you're not just going over to the barn and getting straw. Exactly. So that was the punishment, is now essentially doubling the work, right? So Pharaoh in this conversation is just, you're lazy. You just want to go out and have this feast. You want to walk away. You don't want to do the bricks. I'm going to make it really, really harder. And if I make it really, really hard, and you're going to stop listening to all this nonsense about going out into the forest or going 3 miles down the road, 3 hours, 3 days, I'll get it, 3 days down the road, and having this feast. If I just really just make it like even worse, you're not even going to have time. You won't even remember your own name. You're going to be so busy. And I think that's where Pharaoh's struggle was, or where Pharaoh's mind was at. Any thoughts about bricks? Mud bricks, buildings, palaces.
Yeah, I feel like it's just something that's going to put a wedge between the people of Israel and those two going up to Pharaoh and saying, hey.
So hang in there. Yep. Yes, you're absolutely right. So hang in there. Hold that thought. Verse 10. And the taskmasters of the people and their officers went out and spoke to the people, saying, thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go get yourselves straw where you can find it, yet none of your work will be reduced. So the people were scattered abroad throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble instead of straw. So straw is that dried stalk from the wheat. Pastor Charlie always talks about the straw ride rather than the hay ride. That's how it is that I always got that balance there. That you get when you cut the harvest. Stubble, if I got this right, stubble is the part that's still stuck in the ground. So they were allowed to go get the stubble. So that means they would have to go out and pull it out of the ground themselves. Wasn't in a nice, neat little pile. It was scattered all over. There was tons of the stuff, but they weren't all neatly laid out for them in storage. They had to go out to the fields and grab the stuff, which obviously would take a ridiculous amount of time. Since these taskmasters were withholding the straws, they would have to go out and get the stubble, and this would just double the amount of time. It turns it almost into an impossible task to go out there, spend a day grabbing stuff, but also still kicking through 1,000 bricks a day. 13, and the taskmasters forced them to hurry, saying, fulfill your work, your daily quota, as when there was straw. So they still had to just keep on. It was still the same amount of work. Also, the officers of the children of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, why have you not fulfilled your task in making brick both yesterday and today as before? So the taskmasters, they went out and they were reminding everybody that, you got to keep going, keep going, keep going. They would talk to the officers who is in this hierarchy. The officers of the Israelites were Israelites. So they were, basically people who were in charge of their own folks. And they answered to the taskmasters. The taskmasters came by them on day 2. Now, I think it's interesting that it says that now I've lost my spot. It was day 2, right? Okay, yeah. So because it said, I was looking for the word 2 in my notes. They were making the brick both yesterday and today as before. So they came out on day 2. In the process of making bricks, this is my own theory here. In the process of making bricks, you start on one day. It's a 2-day process because you have to let it dry and then you knead it again. Stick your feet down in there. So it's not something that happens right away. So on day 1, they would have slowed down that production because that's when they would have had to start pulling out the stubble. And then day 2 comes along and they've fallen short of their quota for 2 days now. So that's when they come out and they say, they get the officials, the officers get the beating. I assume that also shows a pretty good, sends a good message to everybody else that they mean business. But they also are saying that, why have you not fulfilled your quota? Well, duh. Like, everybody knows why they didn't fulfill their quota. The taskmasters know, the officers know, the Israelites know, Pharaoh would know. It was an impossible task for them to be able to do all that work and fulfill the quota. So this was basically, they almost like they were just set up. They were set up for failure. Any thoughts? All right. 15. Then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried out to Pharaoh, saying, "Why are you dealing this with your servants? There is no straw given to your servants, and they say to us, 'Make brick.' And indeed, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people." Now, there are some things that I read where they said that these officers came to Pharaoh with the assumption that Pharaoh didn't know what was going on. That it was that the taskmasters on their own had decided they were going to really stick it to the Israelites. So Israelites came, or the officers came to Pharaoh, and they're like, "What did we do? Why is it the taskmasters are all of a sudden, they're like all over our case. They took away the straw. They're having us do double the amount of work. We're having to dig stuff out of the ground in order to just get the pieces. And that's just to make brick. And when we don't do it, they beat the snot out of us. Like it's an impossible job. Like it makes it impossible to reach our quota. Like you got to do something. Almost pleading to Pharaoh, like we need you to fix this. Now, Pharaoh, because the fact this was Pharaoh's actual command, he says in 17, but he said, "You are idle, idle. Therefore you say, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Therefore go now and work, for no straw shall be given you. You shall deliver the quota of bricks." And the officer of the children of Israel saw that they were in trouble after it was said, "You shall not reduce any bricks from your daily quota." So Pharaoh responded again, "You guys are lazy. Lazy." And you know how they always say, you say something twice, then it's extra. I mean, same thing in the Egyptian culture. I'm going to say it twice for emphasis. Not only do I think you guys are lazy, you're lazy. So he was really like sticking it to them, making sure they understood where Pharaoh felt about all this. So because they're lazy, you just want to go down to the lake and have a big party and have this feast. You're just looking to get out of work. If you go there, all the work stops. The brick stops. Everything stops. You can't build things because we don't have anything. So just get your lazy rear ends back to work. No straw for you. It's the same quota, no straw. Figure it out on your own. Get it done, or the beatings will continue until morale improves. It was at this point that the officers kind of realized, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. It's like, this is not the guy that we should be complaining to. He holds a lot of power. He's obviously, this is his command. Like, we got to get out of here before we make this situation even worse. We're in the wrong place. And like, seriously, let's Like, let's get out of here. And so they ducked on out of there. In verse 20, then they came out from Pharaoh. They met Moses and Aaron, who stood there to meet them. And they said to them, let the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us abhorrent in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to kill us. So that wasn't a, hey guys, it's really tough out there. These guys are really mad because they couldn't express their frustration with Pharaoh, but they see the guys that started this. They're walking out the door. They see Moses. This is what I think a really pivotal part of the story. This is where the theme of Moses and the Israelites really start, because here is where they're griping at Moses, and Moses better get used to it because he's going to be hearing a lot of that throughout the whole thing. So they are kind of coming at him. They can't do anything with Pharaoh. They see Moses out there, and they're going to let him have it. They're going to tell him exactly what it is. The Lord's going to judge you for that. You gave him a reason to hate us, and you gave him a reason to practically kill us, because it's impossible. Great going, Moses. Wonderful job, just wonderful. Really appreciate it. And that's where the Moses really started feeling the pain of what just happened, of this whole thing that transpired. Any thoughts on that? Well, this is they want to let somebody have it, and Moses was their guy.
I feel like it's a little odd that Pharaoh just, they can petition him, they can come in, and they can talk. I mean, I feel like they're basically slave labor, that why would he want to have anything to do with it all?
Yeah.
He's got his hierarchy. And wouldn't this be kind of going over the taskmaster's head? Couldn't that lead to further retribution when they fight?
Well, and not knowing again how it is that they got audience to Pharaoh, other than well, if they felt the taskmasters were stepping out of line and using Pharaoh's words, hey, let me tell you what they're doing. This is, then they could have been telling on the taskmasters to Pharaoh, and then you're right. Taskmasters let them know what they think about it later on.
It's really good because you get to see where they start. It's like, hey, count it all joy when trials and troubles come your way, because then it produces faith, endurance. So now you're seeing people who are literally going to be put to the test. God has told Aaron and Moses, go talk to Pharaoh. He went and talked to Pharaoh. He came back and said, no straw, make the bricks, you're lazy, and you're getting beat. Now you have to take all that and go to the God who started all this. The whole thing is, something's going to break. Either you're going to break and you want to stay with the world, with Pharaoh, and let everything be, or you're going to be, you know what, I'm willing to take this. Let's take this trial and go through endurance and see where it leads.
Yeah. Oh, and you're talking about the people who can't see past their circumstances. They've had a God that has watched over them, that has done things for them, but again, you can't see past the circumstance. You can't see past the situation that they're in. And Moses comes along and he said, all right, I'm going to do this. We're going to make a change. And the first thing that happens as a result of this change is it gets worse. And if you're already a beaten person, and all of a sudden now you're getting a little bit more of a beating, it's tough to see past that.
I think it's interesting. It kind of gets back to what Seth was saying. You don't see what God's doing, what's happening, and you blame God for not moving, but the whole time he's moving, you just don't see it, and then you want to just throw up your hands and walk away.
Which is also interesting because they don't blame God.
Well, Moses blamed God.
Moses does, but the people knew that that's what Moses told them.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something great. They don't God getting confident, yeah.
The other side of this though is,
Hang in there, Phil. Hang in there.
the other side of this is, what are the Egyptians thinking? All right, so now you have the Israelites who are now grumbling. They're starting to get irritated, they're getting mad. So what are the Egyptians doing? And I'm not talking about the taskmaster or Pharaoh, I'm talking about the citizens. Are they now starting to get concerned about the Israelites? Are they starting to get scared of them? You know, so is this just all building up so that when it's time to go, the people are like, okay, even to the point to where earlier they talk about where when it's time to leave, they're going to go to the Egyptians and the Egyptians are going to give them their gold.
Mhm.
It's just like setting that up.
Yeah, that's I wondered if it was also like going a different direction. Is that if they're seeing this and they're getting a message that these Hebrew people are, they're a bad people, they're a bad bunch, they need to be treated bad, they need and to see this infighting in them like validates that for them. So, oh yeah, see, look, they're just a problem. But that's where my first thought was when you were saying that. But it makes sense for like I'm seeing this all unfold, and that's how I'm going to go. Bill?
And, it's all about obedience. When we pray, we think that God should answer us. And they were the same way. If God said, okay, go to Pharaoh, and, when Pharaoh didn't show him do what God said he would do at that time, then they started grumbling, right? And that's what we do too. The thing is, there's lessons to be learned through all this. And if we're patient enough and obedient enough, we learn those lessons. And I think this is the thing that God is trying to teach them. And it just seems to me, after 40 years, he still didn't learn. So I think, that's why.
Yeah, I think that we kind of read through a lot of these stories throughout the Bible. You almost can't say, well, who was this a lesson for? Even as we got to go through the plagues, and that's the thing you say, well, who also were the plagues for? Because it was to convince or to compel Pharaoh, but also it strengthened the faith of the Hebrews. So,
Yeah, the trials we go through, it's not to prove to God who you are, it's to prove to you who you are, where you need strength, where you need more faith. And I think that's what he's doing. You need more faith than like in him.
any other thoughts before we get this last group? 22. So the officers come out and they just lay out Moses. They tell him all about it and about what a horrible thing that has happened. And verse 22. So Moses returned to the Lord and said, Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Why is it you have sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people. Neither have you delivered your people at all. So Moses gets this, basically gets laid out by the officers, and he turns and he goes back to God, and he's like, I did what you told me to do. I went to Pharaoh. I told him about it. I followed the plan. I told Pharaoh about it. I spoke the words that you said almost verbatim. I said exactly what you said. And you know what? It only got worse. So their suffering now is even worse. And worst of all, you didn't do anything. You didn't deliver anybody. There was no ending, which is what we kind of talked about before. It was like he doesn't have the whole plan. Doesn't realize this is just a baby step towards it. But here's Moses is like, I tried to do something. I followed God. I did what God told me to do. And the situation got worse. And that's what Pastor Alan's going to talk about next week. No, but he has like that feeling of that God didn't show up. And here, unfortunately, the chapter kind of ends here. I wish it kept going. But here is where you see that we see the bad things that kind of happen, or things don't work out right, and we feel that God said no, or God didn't come through. But again, we don't have the whole picture. And here Moses certainly doesn't have the whole picture. And to see how this really does play out, that this is just a very, very, very small part of the whole thing, for Moses to be able to kind of step back and go, it just didn't work. I made it worse. I did what I was supposed to do, and it got worse. And again, here's Moses seeing the circumstance, but wanting to follow God, but having this trouble. Any thoughts on that?
So I think about the people of Israel who have been in Egypt all these years, and that's all they knew. That was their life. They lived there, they had their families, that's all they knew. So I look at it this way: if I was told by Moses, we're leaving, you pick up everything you know, everything, your family, and we're leaving, we're going to the wilderness. I don't think a lot of them would think, oh, let's just pick up. And we're talking about Lot's wife. Lot's wife didn't want to leave. She looked back. She didn't want to go. She didn't want to leave what she knew, even though it was, it was going to be destroyed. She didn't want to leave that. She probably had friends. She had relationships. So they knew, that's all they knew. They probably had relationships with the Egyptians, because they probably wouldn't have been as easy just to go. But I think maybe having the troubles and the stress, and I think God sometimes makes it like, listen, this isn't going to get any better. It's better for us to go. And I think maybe God made it a little difficult, and He made it hard in their hearts, and made it so that it was easier for Moses in the end to have them leave Egypt. But sometimes when you think, oh, this is my life, and you're comfortable, and this is the way things are going to be, it's not as easy to leave that behind. So sometimes God needs to give us like a kick in the rump. Say, listen, it's going to get worse. You don't really, this is not where we're supposed to be. And sometimes we need that.
Well, I'm going to reference one of your sermons. You ready? How about that? One time Alan talked about the stoning of Stephen and what happened after that. So you have a situation that's a horrible situation with Stephen getting stoned. But if that didn't happen, then from there, the people wouldn't have dispersed. The word wouldn't have gone out. So some good things can happen out of a bad situation. And the people that we're talking about this, because there were some folks that were in Egypt that it was their comfort zone. You know what? I may be getting beaten, and I may be making bricks without, have to get my own straw, but I know where I'm laying my head. And out there in the wilderness, I don't have any idea. And that mentality carried through the journey. They say, hey, at least we were eating back there in Egypt. We don't have any food here. We don't have water. So it was that constant. What do I got to do? Like, guys, what do I got to do to get out of that comfort zone? Realize that you just have to trust in me. I've got you. I'll take care of you. But it's pulling them out of that comfort zone. And we could sit here all day and say, oh yeah, it was tough to get them out of that comfort zone. We're the same way. We're the same way. How do we get out of that comfort zone? How do we step out and go, you know what? I'm just gonna let it go and just like Abraham, just say, oh, yep, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. How do we do that? Yeah. So it is literally all that they knew. I got 2 minutes now. Go ahead. Hi, man.
What touched me about this story is that even though Moses is in a position of leadership, his trust in God was tested too. Because back in Exodus 3:20, God told him, after that, he will let you go.
Mhm.
But then in chapter 5, he's asking God, like, why haven't you done anything?
Mhm.
So it's touching to know that somebody in leadership can have trust issues and have to walk with God.
Yeah, and I think that goes to show you that the Almighty Moses, who, that we should aspire, or on some level, but he had the same thing. He struggled with the same thing. He ultimately struggled with, taking the good advice or bad advice to go into the promised land. So you're right. It's he has the same struggles as the other folks. I think they're just more vocal at him, and he goes to God. So I don't understand. It got worse. Yeah. Coming back. She stole it from you?
Yeah, so that's the exact thing I was going to say. That when you look back on it, the Lord says that even with a mighty hand, he'll say no. So it's not like we all do it too. It's like, did you read the contract? Did you hear what I said?
Mhm.
And you have to read every word.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. He's gonna say no. So just even said, be prepared. This is not going to be successful. And so, but hang in there.
Kind of piggyback on all this, like I just think of what you do when God disappoints you. I think we've all dealt with God disappointing us. I know I dealt with it recently, and it's like, okay, what do you do? And how do you reorient yourself to God?
Mhm.
And it's just kind of interesting that I caught some things along the way, talking about the Psalms, and like there's Psalms of disorientation, orientation. And it's just kind of cool to see how some of the psalmists work through some of their disappointment with God. And either in that psalm or just it was left wide open, because sometimes we're sitting there just wondering for a while why God disappointed us. But I think what I learned is in my disappointment in God, in my own disappointment, my own selfishness, it's just looking into him even more, and because there's something that he's working out along the way, and we just have to just trust. I mean, that's like when he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Like I think, like if you love somebody, you trust them. So you just automatically have to go to him and trust him and lean into him and let him do what he's doing.
And I think that kind of being able to take a step back and there's a lot of stuff sometimes when you look at things retrospectively and you can see how, I was really disappointed because I didn't get what I felt should have happened. But then you take a look back retrospectively and realize, you know what, actually it was better. It was better that didn't happen. And I have to pull out one of the most misquoted verses of the Bible is that all things work together for good. Like, it's that kind of thing, that it's not necessarily that it's going to be your version of good, but it's going to be God's version of good. And what that looks like, we don't see in the moment. And I think that's also where Moses is and where he's kind of disappointed. He's like, man, now everybody's mad at me. I just made this thing a big mess. And you didn't hold up your end of the bargain, which was not, there was no bargain. Yeah. Oh, sorry. There's your finger blended in with your shirt.
Next time I'll put both hands.
Really high. You're like the Pentecostals. Anyway, sorry. I can make that joke.
This situation, the Lord is using these events to build with Moses and the Israelites some degree of trust.
Mm-hmm.
You have to trust me.
Yep.
I'm in control. You don't know the plan. You gotta trust me that I'm doing it for your good.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta help me work out. Remember, this is just a little skirmish.
Mm-hmm.
This is the war. The war is still coming.
Yeah.
This is the more battles to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little skirmish. It will pass. Move on.
And isn't it funny how God has to keep doing that over and over and over and over and over. And thankfully, he doesn't stop. He doesn't give up. He's still like, all right, let me prove it to you again. Make sure you got it. Yeah, that's good. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation and listening to me. I appreciate it. Let's pray, and then we'll do tables and chairs. Tables and chairs. All right. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this part of the story and just this brief look at Moses' situation and about how the culture of Egypt and the Pharaoh's idea of who you are is something that we all kind of have to search for and overcome, and to let others know who you are and just how wonderful you are. Lord, I pray that the parts of your plan that we just don't understand and we don't get, that we lean more on you, and so that we can follow you and just learn more about you. Just pray that you keep us all safe to return on Sunday for the sermon, Lord. And I just pray that you watch over us and we just keep our hearts focused on you. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.